My name is Viola, and I turned 65 last month. I never imagined that at my age, I'd be squeezed inside a cramped pantry behind a dirty mop bucket at 3 in the morning, holding my breath so my own daughter-in-law wouldn't hear me. But when your only child is fading away right before your eyes, and you know the woman sleeping next to him is the reason why, dignity goes right out the window. You do what you have to do, especially when time is running out. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories. Let me rewind a bit. 3 years ago, my son, Malik, married Keisha. She was stunning, I'll give her that, and about 15 years younger than him. My late husband, Otis, clocked her immediately before he passed on. He used to say, "Viola, that girl smiles with her mouth, but her eyes are straight ice." I told him he was just being a grumpy old man. Malik was 42, a successful architect, and he seemed so happy. I wanted to believe it was real. For the first year, it was all good. We had Sunday soul food dinners, laughed, and everything felt right. Then the vibe shifted. Malik started missing our calls. He sounded groggy, always exhausted. Keisha started making excuses. "He's got a migraine, Mama," or "He's working late, don't disturb him." I watched my boy, who used to play linebacker in college, shrink down to nothing over 18 months. His skin turned gray, his hands shook like leaves, and he couldn't even remember simple things, like his favorite cousin's name. The doctors were stumped. They talked about chronic fatigue or maybe early dementia. But I felt it in my gut. This wasn't natural. The breaking point was last Tuesday. I used the emergency key Malik gave me years ago, the one Keisha thought I lost. The house was dead silent and smelled weird, like bleach mixed with rotting fruit. I found Malik in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, looking like a skeleton. I checked the nightstand and saw a cup of Keisha's special herbal tea she insisted he drink 3 times a day. I poured it into a sample jar I brought from home and hid it in my purse. Just as I zipped my bag, I heard the front door unlock downstairs. Keisha was home early, and I was trapped upstairs with no way out. I dove into the walk-in closet and pulled the door shut just as Keisha walked into the room. My heart was thumping so loud I was sure she could hear it over the AC. I watched through the slats in the door. Keisha wasn't the sweet, doting wife she played in public. She stood over Malik, hands on her hips, looking at him like he was a stain on the rug. "Wake up," she snapped, shaking his shoulder hard. Malik groaned, sounding weak. "Drink the rest of this. I have things to do, and I don't have time to baby you." She forced the cup to his lips. He took a few sips and slumped back down. She didn't kiss his forehead. She didn't fix his blanket. She just checked her watch, sighed loudly, and walked out, heading toward the master bedroom. I waited 5 agonizing minutes until I heard the shower running down the hall. I crept out of the closet, kissed my son's sweaty forehead, he didn't even stir, and slipped out the back door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key into my car ignition. I drove straight to my nephew Jamal's place. He runs a toxicology screen lab for the county. "Jamal, I need you to tell me what's in this jar," I said, slamming it on his counter, "and I need you to do it off the books." Jamal looked at me crazy, but he saw the look in my eyes. He ran the tests. 20 minutes later, he came out looking pale. "Auntie V, this isn't herbal tea," he said, holding up a printout. "It's loaded with heavy-duty antipsychotics and a sedative they use for surgery. And the dosage? It's massive. If he keeps taking this, his kidneys are going to shut down within a month, maybe less." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. She wasn't just neglecting him, she was actively erasing him. Jamal asked if we should call the cops right then. No, I said, wiping a tear. We go to the cops now, she'll claim he took them himself. She's slick, Jamal. She'll lawyer up and spin a story about how depressed he is. I need undeniable proof. I need to catch her hand in the cookie jar. I spent the next week plotting. I found out Keisha had fired the weekend nurse and was posting online for a live-in helper because the burden was too much for her. That's when the crazy idea hit me. It was risky, dangerous, and frankly, a little insane, but I knew a makeup artist from my old theater days who owed me a favor. I wasn't going to just watch my son die. I was going back into that house, but not as his mother. I went to see my old friend Shonda, who used to do makeup for all the big gospel plays back in the day. When I told her the plan, she looked at me over her glasses and said, "Viola, you have lost your natural mind. But if that girl is hurting Malik, let's get to work." Shonda worked her magic in her kitchen. She fitted me with a wig that was stiff, gray, and cut in a style I wouldn't be caught dead wearing. A real church mother look, but messy. She used makeup to add liver spots to my cheeks and deepen the lines around my mouth so I looked about 75 and tired. Then came the padding. We added 20 pounds to my waist and hips so my silhouette looked completely different. I practiced for 3 days straight. I changed my walk from my usual brisk stride to a slow, heavy shuffle. I dropped my voice an octave and added a thick Alabama drawl, way deeper than my usual city accent. I became Miss Bernice, a widow from Birmingham who needed the money and kept her head down. Jamal forged some references, making me look like the most reliable, boring caregiver on the planet. When I walked into that Starbucks to meet Keisha for the interview, I was sweating buckets under that padding, but I remembered what Otis used to say, "Confidence is the best disguise." Keisha walked in looking like $1,000,000, typing on her phone, not even looking up as she sat down. "You must be Bernice," she said, finally glancing at me. I held my breath. She looked right into my eyes and saw absolutely nothing. No recognition, just an old lady looking for a check. "Yes, ma'am," I said, letting my voice crack a little. "I appreciate you meeting me." "My husband is very difficult," Keisha said, sipping her latte. "He has severe dementia. He gets confused, aggressive. I need someone who can handle him and, quite frankly, someone who won't ask too many questions. I value my privacy." "I understand, ma'am," I nodded slowly. "I just do my work and read my Bible. I ain't one for gossip." That was exactly what she wanted to hear. She hired me on the spot. Minimum wage, room and board included. She handed me a key, the same key she took from me months ago, and told me to start Monday. I walked out of there feeling a mix of triumph and terror. I was in, but now came the hard part, living in the enemy's camp without slipping up. I moved into the small servants' quarters off the kitchen 2 days later. As I unpacked my humble little bag, I heard Keisha screaming at someone on the phone in the living room. "I don't care what the doctor said. Increase the dose." I froze. I knew right then I didn't have weeks to fix this. I might only have days. Monday morning hit me like a ton of bricks. Keisha didn't waste no time showing me who was boss. She marched me into the kitchen and slapped a laminated chart on the fridge. "Listen closely, Bernice," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Malik takes his medicine at 8 a.m., noon, and 8 p.m. sharp. No delays. He gets cranky if he misses a dose, and I don't pay you to deal with cranky. You make sure he swallows every single one. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am," I mumbled, keeping my head bowed and shuffling my feet. "I'll take good care of the poor soul." She handed me a pill organizer that looked more like a candy store. Red ones, blue ones, white oblong ones. My heart sank. It was enough medication to knock out a horse, let alone my son. Keisha grabbed her designer bag and checked her reflection in the microwave door. "I'll be back late. Don't call unless the house is on fire." And with that, she strutted out the door. The second I heard her luxury SUV peel out of the driveway, I dropped the Miss Bernice act. I stood up straight and rushed to the guest room. Seeing Malik up close broke my heart all over again. He was sitting in a recliner, staring at a blank TV screen. He looked so fragile. "Mr. Malik?" I whispered. He turned his head slowly, his eyes glassy and unfocused. Who are you?" he slurred. "Where's Keisha?" "I'm Bernice, baby. I'm here to help," I said, fighting back tears. He didn't recognize me, his own mother, the woman who taught him to tie his shoes and cheered at every football game. To him, I was just a blurry stranger. "I'm tired," he moaned. "I know, baby, I know." I went to the kitchen to prepare his breakfast, but I had a secret weapon. Jamal had spent the weekend working overtime. He'd given me a bag of look-alike pills, mostly vitamins and sugar pills that matched Keisha's poison exactly. I swapped out every single dangerous pill in that organizer. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped a blue blocker on the floor. If Keisha found one loose pill, or if she noticed the slightly different shade of blue, the gig was up. I'd be fired, or worse, she'd hurt him faster. I gave Malik the vitamins with a glass of water. "Drink up," I said softly. He swallowed them without a fight, used to the routine. For the rest of the day, I watched him like a hawk. I cleaned the house, cooked, and played the part of the silent maid, but my eyes were everywhere. I noticed things I missed before. The way Keisha had moved all the photos of Malik's family into the garage, how she'd changed the passwords on his laptop. She was erasing his past before she erased him. Around 5 p.m., I was dusting the hallway when I heard Keisha come in the front door. She was early. Panic shot through me. I had left the bag of real pills on the counter in the kitchen while I was reorganizing the pantry. If she saw that bag next to the organizer, she'd know I switched them. I heard her heels clicking towards the kitchen. I had about 5 seconds to get there before she did. I moved faster than my arthritis should have allowed. I didn't shuffle. I practically sprinted on my tiptoes. I reached the counter just as the swinging door started to creak open. With zero time to think, I snatched the bag of toxic pills and shoved it deep into the front pocket of my apron, covering the motion by grabbing a dirty rag and scrubbing the granite countertop like my life depended on it. Keisha walked in, her heels clicking on the tile. She stopped dead in her tracks, eyeing me suspiciously. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Bernice," she said slowly, narrowing her eyes. "Why are you breathing so hard? You sound like you just ran a marathon." I hunched my shoulders, slipping back into character. "Oh, Lord, have mercy, ma'am," I wheezed, clutching my chest. "I dropped the flour jar and had to scramble to catch it before it made a mess. My old ticker ain't what it used to be." Keisha wrinkled her nose, looking at me with pure disgust. "Well, catch your breath quietly. I have a headache." She walked past me, opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, and didn't even glance at the counter where the pills had been 5 seconds ago. "Is Malik fed?" "Yes, ma'am. He's resting now." "Good. Keep him in his room. I have guests coming over later, and I don't want him wandering around drooling." She walked out. I leaned against the sink, my knees shaking so bad I had to grip the edge to stay standing. That was too close. If she had seen those pills, the game would have been over before it started. But the risk was worth it. Over the next 2 days, the vitamins started working. The fog began to lift from my son's brain. On Thursday morning, while I was feeding him oatmeal, Malik stopped mid-bite. He looked at the spoon, then up at me. His eyes weren't glassy anymore. They were confused, but clear. "This tastes like the way my mom used to make it," he whispered, "with the nutmeg." I almost dropped the bowl. I had instinctively added a pinch of nutmeg, just like I always did when he was a boy. I wanted to hug him right there, to rip off the wig and scream, "It's me!" But I couldn't. Not yet. "Just a lucky guess, Mr. Malik," I said, forcing my voice to stay raspy. "Now eat up." The real trouble started that night. Keisha noticed he was more alert, less zombie-like. I saw her watching him at dinner, her jaw tight. She didn't look happy that her husband was improving. She looked panicked. After she put him to bed, she went out to the patio to make a call. I cracked the kitchen window just a sliver and pressed my ear against the screen mesh. "I don't know, Marcus," she hissed into the phone. "He's waking up. He asked about his bank account today. The dosage isn't working anymore. No, I can't just wait. If he gets his memory back, we're done." She paused, listening to the person on the other end. Then a cold smile spread across her face that made my blood freeze. "Fine," she said. "Sunday. We'll finish it on Sunday. I'll make sure the house is empty. You bring the injection. We'll make it look like a heart attack." I slid down to the kitchen floor, clutching my chest. Sunday was 3 days away. They weren't just going to drug him anymore. They were planning to kill him, and I was the only thing standing in their way. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Keisha's voice saying Sunday. That was only 48 hours away. I was running on caffeine and pure adrenaline. I knew I had to act fast, but I couldn't do it alone anymore. I needed Malik. Friday morning, Keisha left the house early, dressed to kill in a red power suit. "I have meetings all day," she announced, checking her reflection. "Make sure he eats, and don't let him nap too much. I want him sleeping through the night tonight." As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I locked the front door and ran to the guest room. Malik was sitting up in bed, looking at his hands. The tremors were almost gone. The vitamins were doing their job. "Bernice," he said, his voice stronger than I'd heard in years. "My head, it feels different, like a storm cloud is breaking." I sat down on the edge of the bed. I took a deep breath. This was it. "Mr. Malik," I said, dropping the thick Alabama accent and using my real voice, the voice that sang him lullabies and scolded him for staying out past curfew. "Look at me. Really look at me." He frowned, confused. He squinted at my face, looking past the fake liver spots and the gray wig. He looked into my eyes. I saw the gears turning. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice cracking. I pulled off those thick, ugly glasses and grabbed his hand. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." He broke down, a grown man, sobbing like a child. I held him just like I did when he scraped his knee in 2nd grade, rocking him back and forth. "I thought I was going crazy," he choked out. "I couldn't think. I couldn't move. Why is she doing this?" "Money, baby. It's always money," I said, wiping his tears. "But we don't have time to cry right now. Listen to me. She's planning something bad for Sunday, something final." Malik stiffened. The sadness in his eyes turned to something else, pure hot anger. "She thinks I'm weak," he growled. "She thinks I'm already dead." "We're going to let her think that," I told him. "We have to catch her red-handed, Malik. If we call the police now, she'll spin a lie. We need her to show her hand while the cops are listening." I spent the next hour explaining the plan. We were going to set a trap so tight she wouldn't be able to breathe. I showed him the hidden camera I'd stitched into the teddy bear on the dresser. I told him about Jamal and the pill swap. "You have to keep playing sick," I warned him. "You have to be the best actor in the world for 2 more days. Can you do that?" Malik looked at me, his jaw set. "For you, anything. For her, I want to see the look on her face when the cuffs go on." We were ready. Or so I thought. Saturday afternoon, things took a turn. I was in the kitchen prepping dinner when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a tall man with snake eyes and a cheap leather jacket. He didn't look like a doctor or a friend. "I'm Marcus," he said, pushing past me into the hallway without an invitation. "Keisha sent me, said I need to check the equipment for tomorrow." My blood rang cold. This was the accomplice, and he was heading straight for the medicine cabinet where I had hidden the real pills, the ones I swapped out. If he checked the bottles and realized the pills inside were just vitamins, we were dead. I tried to block his path, making myself look wide and clumsy, but Marcus just shoved past me like I was a piece of furniture. "Move, Grandma," he grunted. He marched straight into the kitchen and yanked open the cabinet where the pill organizer sat. My heart stopped. If he looked too closely at those pills, he'd see they were generic vitamin supplements, not the high-grade sedatives Keisha had paid for. He popped the lid on the Saturday afternoon slot. He picked up one of the white pills, rolling it between his thumb and finger. He squinted at it, suspicious. "This looks chalky," he muttered. "You sure this is the right script?" I had to think fast. I leaned against the counter, panting like I was about to faint. "Oh, sir, don't ask me. The pharmacy sent a new bottle last week. Said it's the same stuff, just a different brand. Cheaper, they said. Miss Keisha knows about it." It was a gamble. I was betting on the fact that Keisha was too greedy to turn down a cheaper option, and Marcus wouldn't want to call her and look like he was nagging. He grunted, dropped the pill back in, and snapped the lid shut. "Whatever, as long as it works." Then he did the one thing I was terrified of. He headed for the guest room. "I need to see him." I scrambled after him. "He's sleeping. He had a rough morning." Marcus ignored me and kicked the door open. Malik was lying there, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. I prayed he heard us coming. Marcus walked over and slapped Malik's cheek hard. "Hey, wake up," Marcus barked. Malik didn't flinch. He let his head roll to the side, let out a low, groggy moan, and stayed limp. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. Marcus grabbed Malik's wrist, checking his pulse. I held my breath. Malik's heart rate should be normal now that he was off the meds, which might give us away. Marcus frowned. "Pulse is a little strong for someone on this much downer," he said, eyeing me. "He was thrashing around earlier," I lied, wringing my hands, "having a nightmare, got himself all worked up." Marcus stared at me for a long, uncomfortable second. Then he let go of Malik's arm. "Give him a double dose tonight. I want him flatlined by tomorrow. We can't have him waking up during the transition." He walked out, and I followed him to the door, locking it tight behind him. I slumped against the wood, my legs turning to jelly. We had survived Marcus, but the relief didn't last long. 2 hours later, Keisha came home. She didn't look tired. She looked wired, like she had chugged 5 espressos. She was carrying a heavy duffel bag. She walked into the kitchen where I was peeling potatoes and slammed a wad of cash on the counter. "Bernice," she said, a fake smile plastered on her face, "I've decided to give you a bonus." "Oh, thank you, ma'am." I reached for the money. "There's a catch," she said, her eyes cold. "I need the house to myself this weekend. I'm taking over Malik's care personally starting tonight. So pack your things. I want you out in 30 minutes. My stomach dropped. If I left, Malik was defenseless. The transition Marcus talked about wasn't Sunday anymore. It was happening tonight, and I was being kicked out right before the main event. I stared at the cash, my mind racing at 100 miles an hour. If I argued, she'd know something was up. If I left, my son was dead. I had to buy time. "Oh, Miss Keisha," I said, putting a hand to my forehead and swaying on my feet. "I appreciate the kindness, truly I do, but my nephew isn't coming to pick me up until tomorrow morning. My old car won't start, and I don't have nowhere else to go tonight." I made my voice wobble, squeezing out a few fake tears. "Just let me stay in the servants' room one more night. I'll be quiet as a mouse. I won't even come out for water." Keisha huffed, tapping her long fingernails on the counter. She looked at her watch, then at me. "Fine," she snapped, "but stay in that room. If I see you wandering the halls, you're not getting a dime of this bonus. And Bernice, lock your door from the inside." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." I grabbed the cash and shuffled to my room, closing the door loud enough for her to hear. I waited 10 minutes until I heard her go upstairs. Then I didn't just lock the door, I wedged a chair under the handle, but I wasn't staying inside. I opened the small window in my room that led to the backyard. It was a tight squeeze for Bernice's padded hips, but I made it through, landing in the flower bed. I crept around the side of the house to the trellis beneath Malik's window. I was 65 years old, climbing a trellis in the dark. My knees were screaming, but adrenaline is a powerful drug. I reached the windowsill and peered in. Malik was sitting up, watching the door, looking terrified. I tapped lightly on the glass. He jumped, then rushed to open it. "Mom," he whispered, "she's mixing something in the kitchen. I heard her on the phone with Marcus. They're moving the timeline up. He's coming over in an hour." "I know," I said, grabbing his hand and catching my breath. "We don't have until Sunday. It's happening now." "I have to call the police," Malik said, reaching for the burner phone I had smuggled him. "Not yet," I said, grabbing his hand. "If the cops come now, she flushes the syringe and claims we're paranoid. We need her to walk into this room with that needle. We need it on camera." I pointed to the teddy bear on the dresser where the hidden lens was blinking silently. "Get back in bed. When she comes in, you act helpless. Let her talk. Let her confess. I'll be in the closet." Malik looked at me, fear warring with trust in his eyes. "What if she doesn't talk? What if she just injects me?" "I won't let that happen," I promised, pulling a small, heavy cast-iron skillet out of my oversized bag. I brought backup. We heard the front door open downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Marcus was here. "Showtime," I whispered. I slipped into the closet, leaving the door cracked just enough to see. Keisha and Marcus walked into the room. Marcus was carrying a black medical bag. Keisha looked giddy, almost manic. "Finally," she said, looking down at Malik. "It's been a long 2 years, baby, but tonight you're finally going to set me free." Malik groaned, fluttering his eyes open. "Keisha, what's happening?" "Shh," she cooed, brushing hair off his forehead. "You're just having a heart attack, sweetie. It'll be over soon." Marcus pulled a syringe filled with clear liquid out of the bag. "Hold him down," she told her. "I need a clean vein." My grip tightened on the skillet handle. I watched as Keisha leaned her weight on Malik's chest, pinning him to the mattress. Marcus flicked the syringe, watching a drop of liquid bead at the tip. "Say goodbye, Malik," Keisha whispered, smiling. That was my cue. I didn't shuffle, I didn't cough. I burst out of that closet like a linebacker.
I swung that cast iron skillet with the strength of 10 women. Clang! I connected right with Marcus's wrist. A sickening crunch echoed through the room, and the syringe flew out of his hand, skidding across the hardwood floor. Marcus howled in pain, clutching his arm. Keisha screamed and jumped back, her eyes popping out of her head. "Bernice, have you lost your damn mind?" "My name ain't Bernice," I growled. I reached up and ripped that itchy gray wig off my head, letting my natural hair fall. I pulled out the cheek padding and stood up to my full height. "And you get your hands off my son before I finish what I started." Keisha froze. She looked from me to the wig on the floor, her face twisting in horror. "Viola? But how?" "Surprise, honey," I spat. Marcus, despite his broken wrist, lunged for the syringe on the floor. "Get the needle," he shouted to Keisha. But Malik wasn't playing dead anymore. He sat up, swung his legs over the side of the bed, and tackled Marcus before he could reach the weapon. My son, who couldn't even lift a spoon days ago, pinned that man to the ground with a rage I'd never seen. Keisha tried to bolt for the door. "I didn't know," she shrieked. "He made me do it." I blocked her path, holding the skillet up. "Don't even think about it," I warned. "You're not going anywhere but a concrete cell." Just then, the front door downstairs crashed open. "Police! Nobody move!" Jamal's voice rang out. "Upstairs! Go, go, go!" Keisha's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the rug, sobbing fake tears instantly. "Officer, help me! This crazy old woman broke in. She's attacking us." Two officers burst into the room, guns drawn. Jamal was right behind them, holding a laptop. "Save the tears, Keisha," Jamal shouted. "We've been live streaming this whole party to the precinct for the last 10 minutes. We saw the needle. We heard the confession. It's a wrap." An officer pulled Keisha up and slapped the cuffs on her wrists. She stopped crying instantly. Her face went cold, that mask of kindness dropping completely. She glared at me with pure venom. "You old witch," she hissed as they dragged her out. "You should have just died and left us alone." I walked right up to her, nose to nose. "You forgot one thing, Keisha. You can mess with my money. You can mess with my house, but you never, ever mess with my baby." They hauled her and Marcus away. The paramedics came in to check Malik. I sat on the edge of the bed, the adrenaline finally leaving my body, and my hand started to shake. Malik pulled me into a hug that squeezed the breath out of me. "You saved me, Mom. You literally saved my life." "I told you, I ain't ever stopping." We thought it was over. The bad guys were in jail and Malik was safe. But as we soon found out, Keisha had one last nasty surprise waiting for us. A financial bomb she'd planted months ago that threatened to take everything we had left. The criminal trial was going to be a circus, and I had one more role to play. The financial bomb Keisha left us was a second mortgage on Malik's house and 3 maxed-out credit cards she'd opened in his name while he was drugged out of his mind. She had drained nearly $300,000 into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. She thought even if she went to jail, she'd leave him broken and homeless. But she underestimated us one last time. Because we had that video evidence of her confessing to the drugging, our lawyer, a shark named Mr. Henderson, was able to prove undue influence and fraud. It took months of paperwork and headaches, but the banks voided the loans. We clawed back every single cent she tried to steal. Malik spent 3 weeks in the hospital detoxing. It wasn't pretty. He had withdrawals, shakes, and night terrors. But every time he woke up screaming, I was right there in the chair next to his bed, holding his hand. "I got you, baby," I'd say. "Mama's here." And slowly, day by day, my son came back to me. His skin cleared up, that sparkle returned to his eyes, and his laugh, that deep belly laugh I hadn't heard in years, finally filled the room again. The trial happened 6 months later. I walked into that courtroom wearing my finest Sunday hat, head held high. Keisha tried to plead not guilty, claiming I set her up. But when the prosecutor played that tape, the video of her holding the syringe, smiling while she told my son to die, the jury audibly gasped. Keisha couldn't even look at the screen. She stared at the table, realizing her game was over. Marcus, the coward, took a plea deal and testified against her to save his own skin. He got 15 years. Keisha wasn't so lucky. The judge called her calculating and cruel and sentenced her to 45 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. As they led her away in her orange jumpsuit, she looked back at me one last time. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just nodded. Justice was served. Today, life is peaceful. Malik sold that big cursed house and bought a smaller place closer to me. He's back to designing buildings, winning awards, and living his life. We have Sunday dinners every week. Fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread, just the way he likes it. He's wary of dating again, and I don't blame him. I told him to take his time. He's only 45. He's got plenty of life left to live. Sometimes when we're sitting on the porch drinking sweet tea, he asks me how I did it, how I had the courage to put on that wig, scrub toilets, and live with a killer. I tell him the simple truth. Malik, I knew you before the world knew you. I knew you before you had a name. When a mother senses her child is in danger, fear doesn't exist. There is only the mission. You don't stop protecting your children just because they grow up and move out. You don't stop fighting for them just because the world says you're too old or just a mother. If I have to crawl through mud, wear a disguise, or swing a cast iron skillet to keep my baby safe, I'll do it 1,000 times over. Otis was right about Keisha from the start. I like to think he was watching from above that night, maybe even guiding my hand when I swung that skillet. We made it through the fire, and we came out stronger, because that's what families do. We break, but we heal. And we never, ever let the bad guys win. Thanks for watching our story. If you believe in the power of a mother's love, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Stay blessed and keep your family close.